Hey guys, let's do this again. Jan's Opening Clinic, Season 22, Episode 5. No time to waste in these busy days of ours. So let's jump straight into the first question. And I believe that first question comes from none other than everybody's favorite Looney Tune. And don't tell me there's any Bugs Bunny people out there. Because, of course, I'm talking about Mr. DaffyDuck, who's saying, "Hi Jan, help me please to get normal, at least equal positions with white after knight f3, d5, g3, bishop g4, or bishop f5. Thanks." That was easy. You go bishop g2, then castle. You have a normal, at least equal position. So I'm assuming he wants even more depth than that. But in general, yeah, if you take a position after move 2, where white played two normal moves, knight f3, followed by g3, it's very hard not to have a normal equal position. So you go here, and after, let's say, knight d7, it depends what kind of setup you want to go for. There is a popular way to play, which I'm not such a big fan of playing with d3 and then going for e4, the whatever, King's Indian attack schemes. Those are very playable and at least equal as well. But I don't like them so much. They feel a bit strange to me. So I would normally try to bother black as quickly as possible by going for c4 against these setups, where they go with bishop g4 or bishop f5. My logic would be something like this. Bishop is nice and active, but it has abandoned the b7 pawn. So I want to start bothering black on the queen side immediately to use the drawbacks of this bishop being out. Of course, black has various plans. Normally, he's not really in time to take this pawn here. For example, after knight a3, white is just better with his bishop on the long diagonal. So typically, they defend it. If they go e6 here, we can certainly play normal stuff like that. In these positions, after cd, ed, it's often an idea to prepare a later breakthrough with e4 in the center. But in this particular position I'd put on the board with knight d7 and e6, you can even get a little creative. Play something like queen b3, knight c5, queen e3. I think I saw some correspondence game where they did this and got a pretty good position. Even though you could argue that putting the queen on e3 on move 6 is not exactly a normal at least equal position. Even though this is at least equal. You could also argue that the knight on c5 is not great. But in general, my approach would be to start bothering black on the queen side as soon as we get the chance. So if they go c6 here, we go knight c3, hitting that pawn. And after e6, once again, I kind of like the direct queen b3, targeting b7 and asking black what he intends to do next. It's not like these schemes are winning or anything, but I do believe they're a good way to challenge black's setup. Of course, black can use various different move orders. He can start with c6 or start with knight f6. But typically, c4 setups are still valid. Like dc4, once again, is nothing to worry about. White is almost always in time to regain this pawn with a good position. So here, if they go c4 and let's say e6 here, I'd still take here. This has the added benefit that after cd5, you win the bishop. You never know. Could happen. So ed5 once again leads to a structure that normally black players like to stay away from. Therefore, the main line in such positions is often bishop f3 followed by cd5. Well, once again, white has the two bishops and he has a normal and at the very least equal position. In general, white plays with d3 in such positions and knight c3, bishop d2. I also have some sympathy for schemes just playing d4, knight c3, e3, bishop d2, trying to make something happen on the queen side. White isn't necessarily better, but I find his position a bit easier to play. And I do believe in le bishops. So general approach for me would be to try to make c4 systems work, both against bishop g4 and against bishop f5. Bishop f5, let's say bishop g2, knight f6. Well, we can castle first. We could also go c4 immediately. I'd still go for something like this. The same logic applies dc4. Never great here. In this case, for example, queen a4 check would be a good move. So black should try to stay solid in the center. And here after c6, once again, we can exchange on d5 very quickly. ed is playable, but again, is strategically a bit risky for black to allow white this potential to expand in the center with d3 and e4 and these ED structures. Most players don't like it, even though this position has its own body of theory, like whatever, bishop c5, b3, bishop b6 and stuff like that. But in general, I like white after ed5, so the more solid way to play is once again cd, but here we do our usual thing, target the b7 pawn. Black's best bet is probably queen b6. We take, we put a knight here. Here we put the pawn on d3. And once again, we're probably somewhat better because of the double pawns. Bishop e3 is coming. Well, this bishop can also go here. Rook here. And you have, or to f4 to control the e5 square. And you do have a very normal, at the very least, equal position there as well. So, as I said, it's a main position after two moves. Hard to be worse, no matter what you do. But my approach to both bishop f5 and bishop g4 would be to play with a quick c4, often combined with queen b3, or with c takes d5, trying to soften up the black position a little bit and use the fact that this bishop on f5 or g4 is not defending the b7 pawn. I hope that helped, Mr. DaffyDuck. Looking forward to your collaboration with LeBron James in the near future. Then we have JFugger. Hello Jan, he's saying, thank you for sharing your expertise in this show. You're welcome. My question is about the Caro-Kann. I've heard some GMs state that white is better in the advanced variation because of the space and blah blah. I might have been one of those GMs. I never really trust such vague statements. Is there a concrete line in which black is worse? Or are those GMs simply talking nonsense? I don't think they are, but once again, since I'm one of them, I will have to take their side here. However, there is, I guess, more nuance to the discussion. So, basically, well, it's been a while now, but let's say 25 years ago, people thought after e5, bishop f5, black is fine because you get a good version of the French. You follow up with e6, c5. Your bishop is outside the pawn chain. And black is doing well. But then with the rise of these slow systems with knight f3, followed by bishop e2, practice and stronger gaming computers have shown that this is not so simple for black at all, and that even very slow plans for white can create significant problems because of this space advantage. It's not so much one particular line, but more, the learnings of practice over a couple of years that, whatever, these positions, for example, they're not so simple for black to handle. Now knight h4 is an idea, so normally they go here. White goes here, stopping c5. And theory and stuff continues. Nowadays you have all kinds of funky setups with g5 that lead to unclear positions. But I do like white's chances in these. Now, since it's more or less been decided, even though you never know what could happen, but the current thinking is that the slowish lines are somewhat more pleasant for white. Black has started experimenting with very direct ways to force the issue, and there the discussion becomes a bit different. There is not so much long-term blah blah structure, more space, which does matter. But it's more like move by move, does this line lead to a draw or is white better? For example, this stuff is a line that I've been looking at with black that leads to extremely sharp play, and the jury is still somewhat out if black is holding in the end, for example in castles, queen b2, queen e1, this is one of the very sharp lines, or if he gets put under pressure. All this kind of stuff is bordering on disaster for black, but with strong computers and the appropriate work, normally black survives. He hasn't done anything too wrong, so it's not like the Caro-Kann has become an unplayable opening. It's more that the thinking has shifted a bit from, okay, we can just play slowly in these structures, play knight e7, knight d7, a6, rook c8, to, okay, we should do something concrete. And I'm not speaking for all Caro-Kann players here. Some people still like playing these slower setups as well. But I believe that's the current opinion, which is also relet, is that a word? Relet to the rise of c5 in this position, which is once again an attempt to force the issue a bit more than playing a slow game with bishop f5. Has its own body of theory. Currently black is holding his own after dc5 e6, which used to be considered a bit better for white. in lines like this, tending to go b4, bishop d3, bishop b2 castles. But black has been coming up with some clever move orders and resources here. Putting this knight on g6 early. I've seen some Polish players do at the Olympiad, for example. There was also a game, I believe, Vitugov against Anand recently. So this 3c5 line has had a bit of a comeback, which I think has been motivated by people starting to look for more concrete solutions. I don't believe that Caro-Kann is a bad opening. Like, logically speaking, I still believe in the openings that fight for space in the center directly. A bit more with e5 or c5. And I do believe there's something to the narrative that the space does matter. But of course, black hasn't done anything too wrong, and with good play, his position shouldn't be lost or anything. But yeah, I kind of agree with those GMs talking about space and blah blah. That these positions, when played slowly, aren't so simple for black. Which is why not everybody, you still see the Caro-Kann at top level. I just mentioned some games, but a lot of the top players do prefer e4, e5, or the Sicilian, because here, sometimes, in order to equalize, you're down to very sharp forcing lines, like this one with c5 and queen b6 I mentioned earlier. So, more blah blah about space, and you can still decide if those GMs are simply talking nonsense or not. Best of luck, JFugger. Then we have our old friend DrBoki, FIDE Master, saying, "Hi Jan, I have a question in the Queen's Gambit accepted. What to do with white after d4, d5, c4, dc, knight f3, knight f6, e3, bishop g4, bishop c4, e6, knight c3. Thanks a lot." That line, yeah, has never really achieved mainline status, has it? I know some theory. I'm not sure if there's anything too wrong with it, but I do believe that it's pushing black's luck a little bit, and therefore it probably won't become a mainline anytime soon. Sort of the same issue like with the other bishop g4s. We've seen that, logically speaking, black does abandon the b7 pawn a little early. But let's look at some theory. So how does this go? I think you mentioned knight c3. I'd normally throw in h3, bishop h5, knight c3, because why not? And now black has some choices. There's some old mainline that doesn't really work here for black. It's something like knight b7, castles, bishop d6, e4, e5. This is the line they taught me in the 90s, where white is just better after some forcing play. Takes. How does this go? f4, right? And yeah, this just doesn't work for black, move by move. I think this is my childhood memories here. Rookie 1 check is what they used to do, but computers also say that bishop d3 is extremely strong. Yeah, computers already getting very excited about white's chances. Knight d7, c4, and black is just not really in time to get everything under control. Or maybe we gave it, I think we gave a check first, sorry, and then go c4. Yeah, this doesn't really work for black. So they have started looking for other solutions in this position. Now, I'm not quite sure what the trend here is. Some people experiment with a6 in order to put the knight here without allowing it to be pinned, but that just allows white to grab this bishop, go g4, knight e5, when I think he's just better. Something like this, you take hg. Here bishop f1 is what we were taught in the old days to relocate the bishop, but the direct queen f3 also seems like a pretty good move. When after c6, bishop d2, yeah. White just has a very pleasant position with the two bishops, so nothing I expect black players to enjoy all that much. There's been some recent games, I think Niklas Huschenbeit, he experimented with going knight c6 directly, but I'm also not sure this equalized. After bishop b5, that's the drawback of knight c6, you get pinned. Niklas did something funky like bishop d6 when e4 is critical, threatening e5, and now bishop b4. But I still thought that black was somewhat worse after. How does this go? Here, 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 and knight d2, key move, removing itself from bishop f3 and covering e4. After c5, just castle it. This bishop is a little offside. White does have the center. So I'm not saying black is lost here, but it did seem like pleasant territory for white. So yeah, that's pretty much all I know about it. I might have missed some other move that they play here sometimes. But in general, I do think white is a bit better, and I don't expect these lines to become hugely fashionable anytime soon. Thanks, DrBoki. Then we have MrNormalName. He's saying, "Hi Jan, how should white play after d4, d5, c4, dc, e4, e5? Knight f3, bishop b4 check. Knight c3, ed, knight d4, knight e7. Bishop c4, knight b6, bishop e3, knight d4. The answer is, don't go 7 bishop takes c4. That line I learned recently about from Luke Van Vele when we did our endgame series. He showed me his game against, who was it? Stevich maybe? Where he got a very nice position out of the opening. And I believe that line is a problem for black. So how does this go? d4, d5. c4, dc. e4, e5, knight f3. Bishop b4 check, knight c3. ed, knight d4, knight e7. And here, instead of going bishop c4, which used to be the main line, when after knight bc6, as far as I know, black has very decent chances to equalize. Luke played a3, which seems to be a problem. I couldn't see anything great for black. Bishop c3, bc. White is just better with the two bishops. He'll regain this pawn and enjoy a pleasant advantage. So in that game, knight bc6 was played. That's supposed to be the point. But after a takes b4, queen d4, white actually has a choice here. And I believe 2 ways to get a better game. Van Vele's game was this. Takes, knight takes b4, and knight b5, key move, targeting c7. And after knight a6, bishop takes c4, even though white is a pawn down. He is better with his space and the 2 bishops. For more on it, check out the video series I did with Luke Van Vele, where he shows his whole game from this position, which he won nicely. And I do believe that this position does favor white. The alternative was queen a4 check here, which regains the pawn more cleanly. So if you don't want to be a pawn down under any circumstances, this is also possible. Castles, bishop e3, queen d6, and b5. Knight e5, bishop takes c4. And white is still somewhat better. So that's what you do. You go a3, don't take on c4. Thanks, MrNormalName, for the question. Then we have Monsieur yvesM. He's saying, "Hey Jan, what do you think of the following line in the London system? d4, knight f6, bishop f4, d5, e3, c5, c3, knight c6, knight d2, e6, knight gf3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6, e4, bishop e7, e5, knight h5, knight g5. Put it on the board in a sec. This position seems equal after bishop g5, queen h5, g6, queen e2, cd h4, but doesn't it seem a bit dangerous? It does seem a bit dangerous. What line would you give for black to have a comfortable position? Kind regard, yvesM." Yeah, this is an interesting line, which I have to admit I don't think I covered in my video series where I gave repertoires against the London and all that stuff. Where I gave this, I'm not sure if as a first or secondary option, these setups with bishop d6. Normally I prefer playing cd, ed, knight h5 here because it's a bit more fun to play. But bishop d6, certainly a main line as well. Bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6, e4, and bishop e7, e5, knight h5, and knight g5. This is a very clever move, because after normal moves, black is just fine. But knight g5 forces the issue. And I believe there was a game, Jorn van Foreest against Svane, which Van Foreest won nicely. So it's certainly a line to take seriously. After queen e2, how does it go? cd h4. The white attack does look somewhat scary with the h-pawn looming up the board. I've checked this quite a bit with good old Compy, and Compy, I think after a while, decided that bishop e7, which looks a bit counterintuitive, bishop h6 looks somewhat more natural, but was more scary, is the way to go. Then after h5, king g7, the black defensive lines basically just hold. It's very important to have rook h8 as a key resource if white starts doing some hg, knight f3, queen d2, funky business. And yeah, it seemed like there was nothing really there for black. He still has to be precise, for example, after c takes for white. He still has to be, black still has to be precise after cd4, for example, knight d4. It's pretty risky after queen to g4. But instead, here black could just go after this bishop, play knight to b4, and he was fine. There's always the idea to go a5 followed by bishop a6. Some correspondence game here that continued like this. And the white attack didn't really get anywhere. The bishop went to a6, and I think it ended peacefully after a while. So this is scary territory, I do agree, but I could not find a refutation of this bishop e7, king g7 plan. Knight f3, dc, bc. Yeah, if you let the computer think, he will give many moves as decent. Bishop b7, for example, and it doesn't look like there's any way through for white. Still, I will admit, this looks a bit scary, and it's somewhat added incentive for me to stick with my other line, cd, ed, knight h5, which, yeah, is a bit funkier. And also, I think it's doing okay. Thanks for pointing that out, Mr. yvesM. Or actually, I was aware of it because I had seen this Jordan game, but I don't think it's covered in my series, so useful information to fill your repertoire there for sure. Then, how many more do we do? Let's do 2 more. benshort, 1986. He's saying, I've been working through Robin's Taimanov series. Robin van Kempen's video series. I'm a fan. I've spent more time, I have to admit, on the King's Indian series. But I've heard good things about the Taimanov and the White Repertoire series as well. Anyway, he's saying, I've been working through Robin's Taimanov series. In Blitz, I have been seeing this line, e4, c5, knight f3, e6, bishop c4. I'm playing black. This totally sidesteps everything Robin covers. How best to proceed? Robin doesn't cover this because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So e4, c5, knight f3. In general, bishop c4 only makes sense in these Sicilian positions if black has already moved his d-pawn. After d6, bishop c4 is sort of a playable move. Still not the scariest of moves, but here it makes sense. If you do it after e6, the bishop will just get hit by d5. So this is a move only inexperienced players would play because, yeah, it's just not logical to expose your bishop to this direct d5 push. You can either do it immediately, which is fine, or if you want to be a little more sneaky, you can start with knight f6, a move I like. One point being that now you can mate e5 by playing d5, and ef6, dc4. It's actually a very good position for black. I discovered this trick when I was very young, this knight f6, e5, d5, and I was very happy with it because it's aesthetically pleasing. After bishop b5 check, you go knight fd7. After ef6, you go dc4, and you're in good shape. Another move white could play is, let's say, knight queen e2, and then knight c6, assuming he castles. We have another useful little trick to know. Knight takes e4, queen takes e4, and now d5 is very strong. So in general, putting the bishop to c4, when black is still ready and willing to go d5 in one go, just chasing the bishop away, does not make a whole lot of sense. And you should punish your blitz opponents for doing it as you move up the ranks. You will stop seeing this move, and that's why Robin hasn't covered it, because black is probably already somewhat better here, which is what you can, I'm not sure, maybe white still equals, or you can only dream of after 3 moves in the Sicilian. So yeah, don't worry about 3 bishop c4. I would recommend play knight f6. Then if they go d3, you can go d5. If they play queen e2, you can do this knight c6, threatening knight e4. And you have this key resource to mate e5 with d5. And black is in excellent shape. So don't worry about it. All right, what do we have next? Yago 666. Wow, scary number. He's saying, hi Jan, what is your opinion of the red line d4, knight f6, c4, c5, d5, b5, cb a6, ba e6, as played by Dubov against Nakamura in the Tal Memorial this year? I've played around with an engine a bit, and the lines are quite interesting. After d e f e, we'll put all this stuff on the board. Black seems to get great compensation for the pawn, so knight c3, e d knight d5, bishop e7 looks critical. The game continued with 8 e3, but knight f3 and 8 e4 might be more challenging. One of many possible sample lines. Knight f3, knight d5, queen d5, rook a6. I like this. e4, rook d6, queen b3, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop e6, knight d2 castles, and so on and so forth. Where black probably doesn't have equality, but has some very good compensation with active piece play. Can this be a valid surprise weapon, or is it just unsound? Many thanks for your excellent work. Thank you. It looks interesting. I have to admit I haven't spent a lot of time in this line, but it certainly leads to very fresh positions, and as a surprise weapon, I'm not against it. And probably both your definitions are sort of right. I'm guessing it can't quite... stand a lot of scrutiny, but it does lead to very complicated, unclear positions, and if you're better prepared here than your opponent, it's certainly worth trying, especially the first time. Yeah. It's an interesting little weapon. D-E-F, I agree, looks like good compensation. So knight c3, I also agree. It does look very much critical. E-D, knight d5, bishop e7. And here after e4 in particular, this looked like the critical move to me. I wasn't quite sure how black should play. Castles looks like the most logical to mobilize ASAP. But then there were some games in correspondence where they went knight back to c3, and I couldn't find anything too thrilling, even though there were some fascinating lines here as well, like knight takes a6, e5, bishop b7. They sacrifice a piece for, once again, at least practical, but maybe even objectively, very strong compensation. Knight 3, d5, bishop e2, d4, knight b5, knight to b4. And white has to walk a real tightrope here. Has to play something like bishop c4, rook e8, king f1, d3. And the computer, if you let him think here, will start dropping a bit. So certainly some practical value in this stuff. In general, I like this approach with going bishop e7 and short castles more. It feels more in the spirit. Keeping options open, how to recapture on a6 and when. This other sample line, for example, after knight f3, I would also be tempted to castle. When e4, I think now black can take on e4. So that's not scary. The line you gave, knight d5, queen d5, rook a6, I found harder to believe, like this jumping around with the rook, even though I'll admit even this position is a mess. Queen b3, knight c6, bishop e3, rook e6. I think my computer gave some move like queen a4 here. But even such, those are very non-standard positions with a lot of targets in the white camp and potential for dynamic play. So I wouldn't be surprised if white came out on top if one continues analyzing this. But there is certainly a lot of potential for surprising your opponent and freshness. The limited clicking that I've been doing has not shown like, okay, you play these obvious moves. And white is winning. So I still won't become a Benko fan. But as a surprise weapon, spicing things up, if you're comfortable being a pawn down for prolonged stretches, it does look like an interesting idea. I'm not sure how to explain it. We give 2 pawns, and then we play e6. Then we get 1 pawn back, and we do battle in the center very quickly. So basically, whatever works. Yeah. I'm not sure it will catch on as a main weapon, but it does, yeah, lead to an interesting fight. And I believe the stronger or better prepared player will often have good chances and such. In correspondence, even though there were some correspondence games with it, so even that might not be true. I don't expect it to stand the test of time. I'm not sure if this episode will stand the test of time, but I do hope that we learned at least a little something. And I also hope to see you guys back for the season finale coming next week. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye. Take care. Maybe I should say that when closing shows.